and welcome to Ask GMBN Tech, where you've used hashtag Ask GMBN Tech down in the comments of any of our videos, and we've picked it up so we can answer it.
And we start with a really simple question, a simple answer. Maybe.
Is it? I bet it's not.
Victor Stoyanowski says, Ask GMBN Tech, can I use an 11-speed rear mech with a 9-speed shifter and cassette? I would have said yes, because your shifter's moving it the right amount. If the shifter speed matches cassette, yeah. Apparently it's not as simple as that.
I'm going to say yes and no and maybe. It's always the case, isn't it? It depends. So you've got a shifter that is 9-speed and a cassette that is 9-speed, which I've got here actually. And you would think that as the shifter is moving something 9 increments, then as long as the derailleur does what the shifter says, then it should work. But it isn't always as simple as that, simply because every time we pull the cable and it actuates the derailleur, it will move a certain amount. So this is what we call like a cable pull ratio effectively. So for every bit of cable that is pulled from the shifter to the derailleur, it will move a certain amount. Now a 11-speed derailleur can, certainly with Shimano, often have a different ratio to the 7, 8 and 9 and 10-speed Shimano shifters and cassettes. So I don't actually know, you haven't told me what models you are, but what you need to do is find out what the cable pull ratio is for your shifter, and then if you're getting a 11-speed derailleur to match that, it needs to match the cable pull so that every time that asks it to move a certain increment, then it is moving the correct increment back on the cassette. Otherwise it could just like be moving a completely different amount to what it needs to in order to engage gears. But there are some that are compatible. So for example, there are a lot of SRAM derailleurs that are like a 1.7 ratio, which is often what a Shimano 9-speed cable pull ratio is, so that could work. The short answer, although that wasn't really a short answer, I'm sorry, is what you can do is either use the 11-speed derailleur that you've got, see if it works, you'll know pretty soon, or you can go onto websites like, I've written it down, it was bike.bikegremlin.com, who do talk about some of the ratios and compatibilities, or you've just got to go out there, find out what the cable pull ratio is for your existing, and then try and match it with a derailleur. However, I am wondering why you're buying an 11-speed derailleur when the 9-speed ones are a lot cheaper. Maybe you're trying to move over to a new group set eventually, in which case I might just wear out that 9-speed completely and then just move over to a full new group set.
True, and if you've already got the kit, you might as well try it and just see, unless you can't find the answer online. Because you might find it works with a few and then it just gets worse and worse, then you know it's pulling the wrong gear as well.
Exactly.
Who knows? Anyway.
Short, long question.
Yeah. Now we're on to bike travel bags. It's quite interesting. This is from Sire927. What are the best cheap stroke mid-range expensive bike travel bags that are available, especially the ones for long haul air travel? Now I've done a lot of this in the past. What you might find is some of the fanciest bike bags are too heavy because, well, it depends what bike you've got. If you've got a downhill bike or an enduro bike, if you're buying a quite heavy bag already, then by the time you put your stuff in there, you'll get to the limit of what is too heavy. So definitely check that. If you've got a super light cross-country bike, road bike, you're probably all right with any bike bag. The higher end, most expensive, probably douche bags. I've used those quite a lot. They've got like a metal frame inside, very sturdy, really durable, really nice to pack as well, very well made, but they are quite heavy. So I can't remember exactly, but check how heavy that is. They're about 600 or 700 English pounds. Evoc are a really good option, more mid-range. They're about 300 to 400 pounds, depending on the model. I've used this one more recently than anything because they're just really nice to use. And they're lighter than the douche bag, so I can fit an enduro bike, spare tyre, my shoes, my pads, and it still is okay for weight, which I'll get to in a second. Cheapest, so Chain Reaction do a soft bag. I've had one of those in the past. I used to have a Planet X one back in the day. It's really similar.
Old school.
Very simple. It's basically just a bag. Most of them have like a wheel sort of compartment that you clip in, but it relies on you packing the bike bag much better. You can get it wrong with these. So we've done videos of this in the past. It's all about getting your bike apart and then strapping it down so that nothing can move around, like your bars can do a lot of damage. They can scratch your fork, can scratch your frame, they can even crack it if you get smashed into it. Because you've got to sort of expect that your bike is going to get stuff laid on top of it. They definitely will. Although in the past I've been very lucky, I've not damaged stuff. So you've got to, get everything strapped down inside there. Cardboard box, a lot of downhill pros just use the boxes. You can get them free normally from most bike shops. They try and get rid of them. Obviously they're not waterproof, so you might find that if your bike gets laid out on the runway in the rain, which does happen quite a lot, that it'll fall apart. But if you take loads and loads of parcel tape, you can virtually waterproof these yourself. And they're the lightest option, which is why the downhill racers use them. But obviously they're the least protective, so you've got to get bubble wrap, you've got to get towels, rags, riding tops, everything nice to do all this. But the important thing is weight. So it can't be more than 32 kilograms. If it is more, they won't take it. Sometimes you'll get lucky and they don't weigh it, or they just ignore it. But I've seen it happen loads of times. If it weighs more than 32 kilograms, they're not allowed to take it for health and safety of lifting the thing. But actually some airlines will charge you if it goes over 23. You'll be lucky to get it less than 23.
Yeah, this is an
super,
XC bike,
super light. If you get a lightweight box, 32 kilograms, you can get quite a lot of stuff in that.
Yeah, agreed. So Marky Gray says, how do you know when a headset has gone and needs replacing, and how do you go about getting the right one? It's a very confusing subject with tons of info out there. Yeah, I agree. Headsets can feel like a bit of a minefield because you've got like drop sets, integrated, not integrated, threaded, semi-integrated, whatever. There's a lot out there and there's a lot of letters and numbers that are really confusing. So first up, to answer your first question, how do you know when a headset's gone? You will feel it. If you lift your bike and sort of turn your bars, you will feel like a grinding kind of feel, like it just feels dry. I've even had one sat in the rain once and it started to like notch, like it locks up.
I normally find there's a rusty pool of water on my garage floor. That's what I think I probably need to do my headset.
It's definitely a headset then. So you can grease them up and clean them up and grease them up and make them feel better. But if that grinding's still there and it bothers you, then that's when it's time to replace it. In terms of what headset you need, it can be a bit of a minefield, as I say. And if you don't have like digital calipers and know what you're doing when it comes to measuring the internal and external diameters of your frame, then the best thing to do is to just find your frame manual, because they will have it written in there. There will be a specific numbers and letters model of headset that you need for your bike, and it's just the simplest way. So go online, find your bike or find the bike manual and see what the headset is and just match it. Otherwise, if you can't do that, go to your local bike shop and ask them to measure it up and order one for you, because it's a bit of a fail-safe then, isn't it?
Exactly. Right, next question from Lel7567, loads of letters.
Catchy.
Can you tell us why the 300mm travel Marzocchi Monster fork was made and why there isn't a new one? Just some information about the Monster fork. So there was a
Are you missing it?
No, I never actually rode it.
Okay.
There was a Monster was the big, massive, wide one. I think it was a Super Monster was the 300 one. There was a
I think so.
Super T. I can't remember.
Monster,
they were kind
Super
of just
T.
massive free ride forks for those earliest huckers to just do massive drops on and on terrible bikes. The bikes were this long. It was just awful. No one ever rode the 300mm travel ones downhill. I don't think. I was way too big for downhill. So just more cushion for that hucking to flat days when everyone wore massive pads. Really heavy, I bet, as well. Actually it says here 6 kilograms those forks weigh.
Yeah, so
That's
these
ridiculous.
days a downhill fork would be more like 3K, so that's obviously a downside to running it these days.
Yeah, and to be honest, you were bolting that fork mainly onto bikes that weren't designed for them anyway, because no one really made those frames in the early days. It was just, jacking the front end up massively, so your BB height was going ridiculous. So it was only made for one thing, and hucking doesn't seem like it's
it's not a thing anymore.
Well, I mean, you can use a downhill bike now. The suspension's so good, and you can make them so progressive and pump them up.
Yeah, unless you're a Frenchman that lives in Squamish, it's not really.
Yeah, but they do it on enduro bikes.
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
It's crazy, isn't it?
So I think if you have longer travel, obviously it's going to be more flexible, and you're going to have such a high front end, and all your geometry is going to be not very maneuverable, which is what a downhiller will actually want. Like bike these days, you do actually want to navigate a technical course. You're not just blatting down a big fire road like they did back in your day, Neil.
Somewhat offended. Yeah, and I mean, someone should bring it back. Let's see a massive stupid fork. Someone would like Braga Veswick would use it to good effect.
Can you get one of those 300 mils and pop it on?
There's one around
bikes?
Town. I see someone pedaling like an e-bike with one around town, so we'll have to try and mug him or buy off him.
I think there's a video in there for you then, Neil. Mr. Newland66 says, I'm new back into mountain biking. I've noticed that the chain and cassette seem to have surface rust after every one muddy ride. Will it damage the bike? Are there any tips to make sure it stays dry? Yeah, you know what? Surface rust happens, especially if you ride in the wet and you put it away where it will happen. It won't necessarily damage your drivetrain as such. You might sacrifice maybe 1 watt of power in efficiency, but if it's just surface rust, then it's not eating into the chain or the cassette as such, and you can get rid of it. You can get some rust treatment, which will brush it away effectively. And I have done a video in the past which does look at some different ways in which you can get rid of rust on your drivetrain. But in order to prevent it in the future, you need to be drying down your drivetrain. So there's a couple of ways to do this. You can get an old rag or an old towel and just dry it off, wipe it off, or I've even seen people use leaf blowers, can you believe it, to blow out the moisture. And then lube it straight away, because that will give it a good protective seal to stop it rusting when you put it away. And also you can get some maintenance sprays which will basically flush out moisture. You can get little straws like this that will go right into a chain and it will flush out the moisture and leave more of a protective seal on top of it. So you can do that instead, but do cover up your brakes if you're going to be spraying that around your bike.
That's what I do. I've got a really old towel that's super absorbent and it's just for doing that, drying off my chain, whacking some of that on, and then I don't actually lube it until I then go for a ride.
Oh, really?
Let that dry it out. It's just when I get to bike, my chain's just clean and dry, and then I'll lube it. And then
no faffing before a ride,
Right, on to a question from KMWS. I've treated myself to a new Santa Cruz Mega Tower. It came with asymmetrical rims. What's the reason for that, please? Well, we've had asymmetrical rims for a long time now, actually, but it's because you look at the rear end and actually if you try and look at the hub spacing, the spokes won't be central on the hub because you've got the cassette like that. So basically, that's the reason. Yeah, you look at that, you would, if it was symmetrical, you'd expect the spokes to be coming in at the same angle. Hence, the sort of rims are designed for that asymmetry. So basically to get balanced load and tension, it means it's less likely to break a spoke as well. So you get a stronger overall wheel. And assuming you won't be changing rims and hubs, then it doesn't really matter. But so you need to sort of match the hub to the rim to get the symmetry right, I suppose.
Yeah, so it's just strength. Cool, right, well that's our last question. All done here. So if you have any burning questions now that you've watched this, then don't forget to use hashtag Ask GMBN Tech down in the comments right now, and we'll try and get back to you, won't we now?
Yeah.
But for now, goodbye.
See ya.